Welcome back to another lecture of AP Government and Politics. This lesson starts our new unit on the United States Constitution. So in this lesson, we will discuss the 7 basic principles of the Constitution. So let's get started. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to list and describe the 7 basic principles of the United States Constitution. The first principle is popular sovereignty. This is the idea that the ultimate source of power in the nation is held by the people. We the people in our Constitution begins with the idea of popular sovereignty. The Founding Fathers began the U.S. Constitution with this important principle, which means that power begins with the people. This idea of popular sovereignty can not only be reflected in the preamble, but also in Article 1 in the 9th Amendment. The next principle is republicanism. Republicanism is the idea that citizens can vote for their political representatives. In the Republic, the citizens vote for what or whom they think will be best for the general public good. Voters can choose representatives to exercise the power that they give them. Republicanism is best found in the preamble and in Article 1 of the Constitution. The next principle is limited government. It is a value that promotes the idea that government power should be as restricted as possible. The idea of a limited government can be traced in English history back to the Magna Carta. The Founding Fathers wrote the U.S. Constitution. They recognized the need to express that the government's powers were limited. Government leaders could not abuse their powers. They were not above the law. This ensures that the citizens' liberties were protected. The principle of limited government can be found in Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. The next principle is federalism, and I know we went over this principle extensively in our last lecture, but we're just going to briefly go over it here, just a brief overview. Now, federalism, as stated in our previous lecture, it is a doctrine underlying a system of government in which power is divided between a central government and constituent political subunits. The founders looked to their state government to best govern their own local needs. At the same time, they recognized the need for a strong national government that would protect them and help regulate their commerce. What was the solution? Federalism. When the founders wrote the U.S. Constitution, one of their challenges was creating a strong national government while at the same time respected the rights of the state government. The Constitution states that the federal government has specific powers such as coining money or defending the country. At the same time, the state government also have powers that are reserved to them, such as creating schools. Finally, there are powers that they share, such as the power to tax, and we learned that to be what we consider to be concurrent powers. The next one is separation of powers. This is a principle that each branch of government enjoys separate and independent powers and areas of responsibility. The reason the framers chose this was because they wanted to ensure that no one person or group of people had too much power. Their idea originates from the way the English government had developed into 3 separate groups: the monarchy, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons. Instead, the U.S. Constitution divides power into the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Each branch has its own unique responsibilities and powers, including powers over the other branches. These branches are described in Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. Now, the next principle is closely related to the separation of powers and its checks and balances. Now, this is a system that limits imposed by the Constitution that gives each branch of government the limited right to change or cancel the acts of other branches. Checks and balances are connected to the separation of powers. The Founding Fathers wanted to make sure that these three branches of government, the legislative, executive, and the judicial branches, would be able to limit each other's powers. They were able to control certain powers as well as share other powers with them. So, for example, the president can appoint ambassadors or federal judges, but only with the approval of the Senate, the upper house of Congress. You can find this principle throughout Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. These concepts are a very important way to protect the citizens' liberties and ensure that no one branch becomes too powerful. Each branch always has the other two branches looking over their shoulder. The next principle is individual rights. So individual rights basically guarantees individuals' rights to certain freedoms without interference from the government or other individuals. So you can see this quoted in the Constitution in the preamble, where it says, "Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." This idea can be traced back to Thomas Jefferson's quote on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence, which was derived from the philosopher John Locke, had argued that all human beings were born with three natural rights: life, liberty, and property. And the purpose of government was to protect those rights. The founders debated the best way to solve the issue, but ultimately the Constitution was amended to include the protection of certain rights, which can be found in the Bill of Rights. And that's pretty much our last principle of the Constitution. So here are the sources. So this concludes our lesson on the 7 basic principles of the Constitution. Next, we will go over the Constitution in greater detail. If you haven't already, please make sure that you watch the National Constitution Center tutorial that will be linked in the description below to see how to navigate the site. You will be using this site to actually read assigned excerpts of the Constitution starting next week, so please make sure you understand how to navigate that website. So as your assignment for next week, please read the preamble in the first 10 amendments. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free in contacting me through Study Island, and I'll be happy to assist you. And I also want to let you know that you'll be going through the Constitution self-paced, and I will give you a link on all the assignments that you will need to do for this unit. So please make sure you keep your eyes peeled on that, because I will be releasing that within the next week or two. So like I said, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to assist you. This is going to be a really, really fun unit, and I cannot wait to introduce the unit to you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.